social justice, empowerment, participation, communication, development, amazing concepts. But what do they mean when it comes to you and me, and to the Eskimo in the tundra and the natives in Australia? We are going to find some answers to these. But before we begin that, I would request you to share this link on your YouTube, Facebook, Instagrams, and spread with everyone. Today, we are here to discuss the latest book, which is a seminal work in empowerment and social justice. The way it's been titled is Communication for Development, Theory and Practice for Empowerment and Social Justice. We today have the privilege of having Professor Srinivas Melkote with us in the studio. Thank you, Professor Melkote, for taking time out of your super busy intellectual schedule to be with us. So first things first, please tell us a little bit about the book and also about the success of the two earlier editions.
Well, as you said, development communication is a field very popular in many parts of the world, and it deals with the place and role of media in development and change, especially in critical social change. The first edition of this book I authored in 1991, and it is yellow, Communication for Development in the Third World, Theory and Practice. And to my pleasant surprise, it was received very well. And I was very gratified when I would go to conferences and people would meet me and say, I read your book. And in one place in Australia, which for the first time I was visiting, 3 or 4 students ran up to me and wanted my autograph. Anyway, those were some very nice, happy experiences. Towards the end of the 1990s, the publisher of this book, he put pressure on me and said, no, you need to come up with a second edition, and therefore I had to take on a co-author, because in the first edition I felt that I didn't have too much of discussion about gender-related issues, and by the way, that is a very important area. And also postmodernism and post-structuralism and all of these things had crept into the social sciences by the 1990s, and they had to be dealt with. So in 2001, I co-authored with Professor Leslie Steeves the second edition with the same title, except that we added Theory and Practice for Empowerment, because that had become an important idea. And both of these editions, or rather the second edition, has done extremely well and has been used in, I would say, most English-speaking countries as a core book in graduate and senior undergraduate classes. And that leads us, I guess, to the present edition.
So the third edition has been released very recently, and we would like to learn that what is unique about the third edition and how is it different from the two earlier ones?
The third edition is, while the earlier editions were Communication for Development in the Third World, this edition is titled Communication for Development. And so the third world is missing in the title, and that, I think, is a major paradigm shift. And I want to elaborate on that in just a minute. This edition deals more exclusively with empowerment and social justice in communities around the world in the context of increasing globalization. As you know, in the last 10 to 15 years, globalization has been accelerating. So this was not something very major that I dealt with in my 2001 edition, but in the 2015 edition, both Professor Leslie Steeves and I are dealing with increasing globalization and with the emerging technologies and digital technologies. How is the field of development and change, how has it changed in these kinds of new contexts? Now, going back to the earlier idea that I said, we deliberately took third world out because in the last 10 or 15 years there has been a change in the thinking, because we don't believe that the problems of change or development happen or should happen only in third world countries. Countries as units of analysis was an arbitrary choice that we made and that other authors have made, but it doesn't have to be so. So in this book, the unit of analysis is communities. And so we have communities that have issues, problems all over the world. It's not just confined to third world. So that is a big change. And what has happened is that economic and political issues have become very important, especially as they relate to development and change, because the economic and political policies that have been enacted in many countries around the world under the neoliberal political regimes have exacerbated inequality among people, between countries, in incomes, and this brings us to a very important point, that area that we introduce in this book, and that is social justice. And so we explore the role of development communication or communication for development as a vehicle for social justice. And so this book deals with it in a very thorough fashion that was not there in the earlier editions.
So, so far what we've heard is that the first edition came in 1991, and the author and the authors have kept up with the time, emerging technologies, the economic inequalities, they have kept up with the time, the new literature that's coming in. So it is a real updated version. And from what I hear, that you have come up with a model and for development and social justice, and I would request for you to talk a little bit about that without giving the core of it, because we definitely want you all to have a copy of this book and read about it more. So Professor Melkote, if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yes. Professor Leslie Steeves, my co-author, and I are really excited about this new model, a new framework that we have introduced in this in this book, and it relates to what I was telling you earlier, that in this edition we are interested in looking at the place and role of media and communication in towards achieving empowerment and social justice in the context of globalization. And therefore we have developed a new framework. Basically this framework foregrounds media and communication as vehicles for empowerment and social justice, and making those as the main goals of development communication in the context of the 21st century. Basically, the field, the way it has been in the past, development communication, is we have discussed about issues of underdevelopment, lack of access to very important resources like education, like health, most of which obtained in third world countries. And that was the main content or the main context of the earlier two editions. But in the last 10-15 years, we have noticed that the term development or change has to be much broader than just implying underdevelopment or what we call as freedom from underdevelopment, deprivation, inequality, etc. Because 21st century has thrown a lot of other issues that also need to be discussed within the context of directed change. And therefore, in this particular framework, it's an outcome of this thinking that we have stepped out of the traditional box within which development was discussed in the past, and we have attempted to create a new avatar for development communication, and which is in sync with the global challenges today. So basically, we discuss not only freedom from underdevelopment and deprivation, inequality, but now we also discuss freedom to explore one's potential, one's capacity, one's capability, and to live a meaningful, meaningful and a let's say satisfying life. And therefore, we believe that, and through this framework, what we're trying to show is that there are twin goals: freedom from underdevelopment and freedom to develop one's capacity, capability, and to live the kind of life you want to live. And so I would say that we are talking about, on the one hand, emancipatory politics, which is still very important, but now we are also talking of the politics of self-actualization, or what is called as life politics. And we discuss that in this, or rather we work it out in this model in a local global continuum. And that's the other thing in that we have incorporated in this book. Not only do we not discuss nations as units of analysis, and therefore we took out the third world, but today it is very difficult to talk of countries as units of analysis, because now we are looking at a global world, and so distinctions such as local and global make more sense today, especially when you start analyzing the role of digital media. And so in this model, we look at what is or what should be the role of development communication in the 21st century in a local global continuum. What should be the role? What are the principal communicative actions, or what are the principal responsibilities of development communication? What are the outcomes that are expected from these activities that will work towards the twin goals that I was telling you about: freedom from inequality and freedom to achieve one's capacity, capability.
Wow. This model definitely raises more questions to me rather than answering them. So, what it's worth for, definitely, when you get a chance, order this book. And these two words, or the way to look at it, freedom from and freedom to, makes you think a lot. Try to dwell upon it a little bit in your own time. But right now, we have some more questions for Professor Melkote. So, Professor Melkote, what we want to know is, how and when did this idea for the third edition come to you? And we want to know some more details about the journey from when it started until now.
Well, if I look back and try to figure out exactly when, I would say sometime around 2008 is when started actively thinking about maybe we should come up with another edition. But it remained on the back burner for a while, till about 2010. And then it's around 2010 that Professor Leslie Steeves and I got together and we started work on this. And so towards the end of 2010. So we have been busy working on this book from 2010 till about end of 2014.
Wow.
Yeah.
A long time. That's a scholar's life. I also want to now change the focus from your side onto the reader's side. I want to know about your opinion. How does this, or how should this book be used? How do you foresee academicians, students, and different audiences using this book?
Yeah. Well, a primary audience for this book in the past has been students, graduate students, postgraduate students, senior undergraduate students, but it doesn't have to be. It is not written in that way, though it could be used. This could be used by by anybody who's interested in understanding the role and the potentialities of media and communication in directed social change, especially now with the digital communication technologies and the global village that we have today. So it's written for somebody who's very interested in this issue, especially as it relates to development, that is inequalities in income, in living standards around the world. That is the traditional field of this area. It can also be used by other professionals in the like post-colonial studies, ethnic studies, or environmental studies, feminist studies. And so it is written as a critical discourse on the practices of media and communication in the area of development and directed social change. And it could also be used, I believe, by practitioners in the field. It could be journalists who work in this area. It could be field workers who work in the area of media and communication for change. So it has a fairly broad audience.
Well, so if you were so far wondering whether you think this book is for you or not, that's your question. It is definitely for you. So with that understanding, don't ever shy away from ordering the book. Which brings me to the question, how do we order the book? Where can we get it?
Right now, the book is available on Flipkart. And if some of you do not know what Flipkart is, it is very similar to Amazon, but it's the Amazon of India. So right now, as we speak, one can order it from Flipkart, which is www.flipkart.com. I believe the book should arrive in Europe and US in another month or so, and I'm sure in a couple of months one can order it from Amazon.com, and it should be easily available.
So for some of you who are watching, we are in the month of October, late October. So if you get a chance to watch this video after some time, the book will already be available. But right now, if you want to rush and get a copy of it, Flipkart.com is where you can get it. Also, how can the readers or people who are interested in this work get in touch with you?
Oh, that's easy. I am reachable by email, which is my last name, Melkote, M-E-L-K-O-T-E, at BGSU, which is Bowling Green State University, at bgsu.edu. And probably that would be the best way to get a hold of me.
Okay, so once again, don't shy away from sending that email with your questions. Professor Melkote, more than happy to respond to that. With that, Professor Melkote, do you have any final words to our viewers?
First of all, I want to thank you and the others for giving me this opportunity to have this delightful conversation with you on a subject that excites me all the time. And we have, Leslie and I have put in some hours. We have burned the midnight oil from the old expression on this. We're really thrilled about this. And I do hope that people will read this and will reflect on what we have written. And I hope that this will move the scholarship forward. Because we believe that media and communication are very critical tools to deal with some of the challenging issues that are plaguing us today in terms of increasing inequalities. And as you know from the Millennium Development Goals that just concluded, we have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people around the world who lack basic necessities, health care, education. And so these are very important issues, and what role can media and communication play in this? And so our book not only describes but also actively critiques the work that has already been done, and tries to build into the scholarship as well as practice of communication for development.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Melkote. So, everyone, this is how the latest edition looks like. If you have a question whether you should get this book or not, just ask yourself this. Freedom from, freedom to. What do I want freedom from, and what do I want freedom to do? That will answer your question whether I want this book or not. Once again, I want to thank you for taking time out to watch this video. I highly encourage you to share this on your Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, LinkedIn, and please spread the word. This has been a book. The earlier editions have sold over 10,000 copies, and this is the hot take.